Welcome to Banyan Books, Branches of Wisdom, celebrating the joy of bright ideas and heartful lifelong learning. Branches of Wisdom is a series of intimate conversations with the world's most influential authors and visionaries. We explore spirituality and the human mind, ecology and culture. Most episodes are recorded with a live audience. You can join our live events and submit questions to your favorite guests. Check out our upcoming schedule at banyan.com. Since 1970, Banyan Books has been a rich oasis at the crossroads of wisdom and philosophy, offering resources for humanity's evolving paths. We're a locally owned, independent bookstore in the heart of Vancouver's Kitsilano neighborhood. Visit us in person or shop online at banyan.com. Please subscribe, follow, like, and leave your reviews for the podcast. And now, enjoy.
Hello and welcome. My name is Jacob Steele, the events manager for Banyan Books. Today we're delighted to be hosting the co-founders of Inquiry-Based Coaching, otherwise known as IBC, Pedro Cortina and Tania Fierro, to speak on this liberating method of self-inquiry and on their book, Inquiry-Based Coaching, The Power of Zerospace. And there is the book cover. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that although we have participants joining from around the world, the physical location of Banyan Books is on the unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples, including the territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Tania and Pedro welcome your questions. Please type questions into the chat box at any point during the event. So I am just so excited to be hosting Tania and Pedro and to hear them share about the IBC methodology. I've personally found their work profoundly transformational and liberating. I studied with the Innerland Institute for a couple of years myself and just absolutely found it life-changing. So it's just such an honor to have them here. Pedro Cortina is a lead co-creator of IBC Method. He holds a bachelor's in philosophy and economics. He has master's and doctoral degrees specializing in leadership and entrepreneurship from UBC and the University of Calgary. He's a certified counselor by the American Philosophical Practitioners Association in New York and a graduate from the finance program for senior executives at the University of Oxford. Additionally, throughout his life, he is fully immersed in several Eastern transformational traditions such as Mahamudra, Dzogchen, and Advaita. Tania Fierro is the founder of the Innerland Institute and a lead co-creator of IBC Method. She is a philosophical counselor and a member of the American Philosophical Practitioners Association. Tania is certified from the Applied Internal Family Systems Therapy program at the Adler Graduate School and holds a BA and MA in Applied Philosophy. She served as director for the Institute for the Work of Byron Katie in Los Angeles and was director of Human Rights Sector for Tibet House. She also participated in the 1988 Seoul Olympic Games and is likewise a practitioner of several wisdom traditions such as Mahamudra, Dzogchen, and Advaita. And their new book is Inquiry-Based Coaching, The Power of Zerospace, Living Your Inner Freedom. And you can purchase the book and find out more about their work at innerland.ca. So without further ado, I welcome Tania and Pedro.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Hello, Jacob. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight, this beautiful evening, and for allowing us to share a little bit of our path, our adventure, our own process of self-understanding and being able to share that process with everybody else. Tania and I met when we were very, very young. We were kids and we were playing around this little area where we used to do sailing. Tania is, as you've heard, from Jacob. She's an Olympian. She's a participant for the Seoul Olympic Games in sailing. And we're very young, and somehow we started connecting at that level. And since then, we haven't stopped. And one of the things that profoundly drives the work that we do, and what we want to share, is to have the most succinct, powerful, efficient models and methodologies for transformation. And we've had the privilege of exploring many wisdom traditions, as Jacob was mentioning. We're both graduates from university degrees in philosophy. Then Tania went into the ethics field. I went into the leadership field and entrepreneurship field. And what's always been in the back of our mind is, how do we get to that space where we are fully aligned with ourselves, where we are fully present with ourselves and with others, and how can we share that as best we can? And that's how IBC, inquiry-based coaching, came to be. The origins of the model are the traditional questioning art of philosophy that we know of, and we've seen, and we have books and for thousands of years. One of the things we've noticed is that in the question lies the answer, and it's not a matter of the question being important, which they are. It's a matter of where we answer those questions from, and that accessibility, and to build that capacity in ourselves and support it in others to be able to access to that space of profound alignment and answering of those questions. And in the Buddhist traditions, in Dzogchen and Mahamudra in particular, we have the experience of Rigpa, and we have the experience of Mahamudra, that are the highest experiences of self-alignment and clear mind. And so our challenge was, how can we bring those principles into a clear, reliable, consistently replicable model of transformation and share it with the world? And in essence, that is the model. That is the model of IBC. It has been inspired in many other inquiry-based models, like, of course, the peripatetic philosophers back in the day, of course, Socrates and Plato, and more modern versions of inquiry, such as the work of Byron Katie, where we both fully trained, and where Tania was the director for the Institute of the Work for several years. And we've come up with this set of questions, 16 questions, that are designed to transform your perception of whatever it is that you're going through, from an obstacle assumed experience into a clear, self-aligned, deeply understanding and deeply relaxing experience. Tania, anything that you would like to add as an intro at the moment?
Well, I'm delighted to be here, and so excited to share this with you all, because yes, we have studied all these traditions, but there's a deep passion for simple, fast, applicable to any area or any field. So when we make powerful questions available to people that are in companies and leadership roles, and as well available to people that are in the wellness or mental health field, and we create a model that can deliver, in a short amount of time, that interconnection to that zero space or self-alignment. So what we call zero space, this is a concept that is at the power of zero space, is that that spacious, clear, joyful, spontaneous, and loving energy that is always available to us, that lives in us. It's not that we acquire zero space, we are zero space. This is very important. And anything that gets in the way of recognizing that we are zero space is something that we simply need to question. So the way that we question it is we start by setting up what we call the spirit of inquiry. And the spirit of inquiry is very beautiful because it allows us to go from a functional A to B mind to a slower, more appreciative, more self-aware space. So we set it up with the following questions. So first is to really recognize an obstacle or a thought or anything, or even a body sensation that is really taking our energy. We have found over and over again that these obstacles that take us away from zero space really take sometimes 60, 70, 80, 90% of our energy. So the first thing is to identify. The goal is to identify what is that in particular. And then we ask, are we willing to be wrong about our perception of that? Are we willing to open our mind and be genuinely curious? So how does genuine curiosity feel in our body? How does the willingness, inviting ourselves to be wrong, impact our perception? Then the third question would be, are we willing to be vulnerable? Which means that perhaps willing to be wrong or opening to genuine curiosity brings up emotion. Sometimes it's fear, sometimes it's anxiety, sometimes it's sadness, sometimes it's anger, sometimes it's this sense of overwhelm, and just allowing our experience to be open and curious about that. And then, the willingness to be a little bit uncomfortable as we experience this. And then the last question would be, are we willing to be humble, or to be simple, to have a more subdued mind, in the sense that we don't have a 360 view of anything. So setting up the spirit of inquiry requires the willingness to be wrong, the openness and curiosity, that vulnerability of what's true for us in that moment, the capacity to be uncomfortable and to welcome discomfort, which we're sometimes not very good at, and the willingness to have this sense of, well, I don't really have a 360 view of any situation whatsoever. So once we set up that, we open to asking ourselves, how intense are we feeling this in this moment? From 0 to 10, 10 being super intense, 0 is nothing. And then we invite them to the series of 16 questions that Pedro was talking about, that allow a slowing down of the mind. There's this sense of going from a mind that has a system that just functions and reacts, to a mind that allows deep oxygen, deeper breaths, and slowing down, so we can really, really, really ponder. And when we're pondering these questions, we're really wanting first to see, how is it that we set up this obstacle? What do I mean by that? We ask, what images do you see when you're thinking about this obstacle? What sensations happen in your body? What emotions happen? And to really sit with it. And then asking, when we are setting up in our mind this obstacle in this way, who do we turn into in that moment? So for example, if I'm afraid of not being, let's say, valued in any way, shape, or form, at my work, at my relationship, relationship, in my family, with my friends? What images does my mind provide as proof? What emotions, what sensations? And then when I am not feeling valued, what identity happens? What happens in my mind? Imagination. Do I become small? Do I become a small child? Do I become somebody that's quiet, that becomes insecure? Or, or somebody that fights to be seen, somebody that fights for attention? And then who do others turn into? Who do I make others in my mind when I'm feeling that I'm not valued? So this is the setup. And then that other part of the inquiry allows us to say, okay, so when I set up in my mind this vision, when I have this obstacle, super intense, and I'm willing to be wrong, and I'm really exploring it with curiosity, how do I feel that sometimes I exaggerate this? How do I disconnect from myself? Right? So sometimes when we feel that we're not valued and this is taking up so much of our energy, we exaggerate maybe situations, or we become, we just see very partial things. And then maybe habits show up. Like I stop talking to people, or again, I fight. So what habits? Right? So this slowing down of what happens, what images, what identities, what exaggerations, what habits show up for me? And then what assumptions am I making about myself? What assumptions am I making about others? How do I create this in a way that's perhaps more painful? So we go from this, okay, this is the setup. These are the consequences of the setup. That would be like the second part of the inquiry. And then the third would be, which is when we are getting closer to opening up to a different experience, it's allowing more oxygen to come to the body and to really pause and close our eyes and ask this very powerful question. When I'm not feeling valued, what am I not able to see? What am I not able to notice? And we wait. And we ask and we wait, because this question will not have the answers so ready like the other parts did, with the images and sensations and exaggerations. And it's like a mind that, it's like this moment where the koan happens. It's like, what am I not able to see? And I have to pause and wait. So I allow a different aspect of my being to come forth. I allow my discursive mind to meet my heart in a way that is much slower and kinder and gentler and deeply curious. And answers come. Like, for example, if I'm not feeling valued, and I really ponder, like, I see how I devalue myself, perhaps. Or you can find your own answers. And then, what are you not able? Then what becomes fresh, new, exciting, clear that I wasn't able to see before? What's my opportunity for growth in this moment? And what would be my next step? So in Innerland, the logo of Innerland are these spirals. And what we do is we ask what's left. So if I started, let's say, my inquiry at a 10 and I go down to a 5, then I always ask what's left, because what's left is something deeper that I can take to the top and inquire again until I get to 0. And then when we have that 0 experience, we breathe We expand and we let our body know that we got it. So that would be the body of the IBC method with the questions very quickly for you. And, in the book, we go through supporting all the things that I will pass the word to Pedro so he can share with us.
Thank you, Tania. That was a beautiful presentation and an explanation of the questions. And so that's the invitation. The invitation is 16 simple questions. We're always working hard to simplify as much as we can. We're testing a model with only 12 questions now. And it's basically the same questions. We're trying to make it as efficient as possible. And what happens is that the people that find IBC and start working with IBC, what starts happening to them is they start first identifying what's getting in the way, number one. Number two, they have a tool that efficiently allows them to see what is it that they're missing. When they are sequestered, when their mind is sequestered, when their world is sequestered by the assumptions that they are making about themselves, about the world, or about others. And as they do that, they start generating an ability to go into that space that we generally do not have or do not cultivate in this world. It's not out there in society. It's not out there in schools. It's not out there in university. It's not out there, generally speaking. And that is the space where I go to question myself around an assumption and find the blind spot. Find what I'm not able to see, find what I'm not missing, find the resources that I do have available that I cannot access or that I'm not able to access because I am so entrenched, so embedded into my assumptions. And in the work we've done and in the book, we call these assumptions algorithms. And we use the word algorithm because now it's, everybody understands it because of the Google algorithm or the Facebook algorithm or whatever algorithm. And the gist of it is an algorithm is a simple rule. If A, then B. And since the moment we're born, we're bombarded by these assumptions of algorithms all around our lives. If you behave like this, then you will end up alone. If you don't work hard enough, then you'll end up in difficult situations. If you do, and so we're born into this world with this series of assumptions that are untested assumptions that build up strong, hard mechanisms in our mind, in our psyche, in our soul, however you want to describe that push us into situations that can only be described as contriving, dense contriving. And that is, many Buddhists would say that's the nature of samsara, contrivement, things that are tight, an inability to see, an inability to understand, an inability to connect, an inability to express, all these things. And the more it is a practice. Like meditation, it is a practice. The more we practice IBC, the easier it is to access this space of clarity and an understanding that we call zero space. And that would be the invitation. This is a model of coaching, and we're sharing this with Jacob before we started. This is a model of coaching where the coach is not a guru. The coach is not someone that knows what you don't. The questions are the coach, and the questions are only half of the model. The other half is what so eloquently Tania presented as how you answer the questions, or in other words, from where do you answer the questions? If you look at the work of Daniel Kahneman, who is a Nobel Prize of Economics, and he was a very well regarded psychologist in the US. He developed the model or the understanding of slow brain and fast brain, or slow thinking and fast thinking. And he often used to say that we mostly spend our time in this system one that he called the fast brain, where the assumptions are, where the triggering happens, where we live most of our time. And that moving into system two was something that would rarely happen, and probably something that would happen when system one would go, you know what, I can't deal with this anymore, you go, right? But our assertion in the IBC model is that the IBC model is conscious, structured, very easy model, very easy to understand and to apply model to move from our system one to our system two, to move from the space where we live within assumptions to the space of openness, to the space of understanding, to the space of clarity, to the space of creativity. And we're very excited. We have many projects where we're using these principles. Particularly right now, there's a very interesting project in the arts in using ballet and dance to understand this movement from system one to system two. And our hope is to eventually develop models as simple as 16 questions, or a set of steps, or a set of principles, where we find ways to move from system one to system two. That is not through exhaustion or through some kind of strange, inaccessible spiritual experience of enlightenment. Something that is easy to access and reliable. And one of the things that we've noticed in many years of sharing IBC with thousands of people is that almost 100% of our participants find that it works for them, which is absolutely mind-blowing for us to see. Generally, efficiency and transformational models, if you're very high up, you're at the 70% in our experience in the models that we use at the Innerland Institute with the people that have been part of our programs. It is absolutely mind-blowing. And like that one, there's so many other projects that are quite interesting that we're looking into. There's the University of Bern in Switzerland is also doing a study with 550 participants in order to address jealousy in romantic relationships. And of course, the results aren't published yet, but we're hoping for amazing results as well, because we've seen that it works in many situations that involve jealousy. So those are some of the of the projects that we have right now, and we're very excited. This is a model that we built, Tania and I built a little bit. In a small setup with very small groups of people, and we believe the model is ready for the world. And now, with all the advancement in artificial intelligence, et cetera, we could really see the possibility of having an IBC AI-powered coach that could support hundreds, thousands, or even millions of people around the world. Because again, this is not a model where the coaching comes from the guru or from the, educated one. It is a simple way of answering 16 questions. The only trick is to know how to answer the questions, from where internally to answer the questions.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I think our passion in all these years is to really, that we also have an app that you can download to practice it. And if you are familiar with inquiry, it can guide you. But seeing this over the years, my heart explodes when I see people moving from fear to love. Because it's about opening the heart. It's about doing a heart alchemy that takes us from living from this contrived, fear-based, calculating, risk-adverse mindset to one that is truly open and trusting of our capacity. So, we say over and over that IBC builds the capacity to trust. And we're trusting something that has always held us inside of ourselves. That it moves from, needing this, from being in this dependent, sometimes, addictive, attached relationships that we may have, or either with people or with friends or with situations or with family, that eventually will change. For sure. Guaranteed. There's no discussion about that, either through life or through illness or through death, like the Buddha taught us, right? So to be able to internally resource ourselves in that love and understand that connection and that capacity to be willing to be open to impermanence without fear, to be open to change without fear, is the most delicious medicine we can give our beings. It's like coming home always. And it takes a lot, For me personally, it's, we left Mexico, Pedro and I together 20 years ago to raise our family in Canada. So that was a huge detachment process. So, the suffering that I've experienced in my life through that has required me to detach, it's been very painful. Because we don't know how we don't know how to relate in a way that is not putting pressure on the external. Wanting people to be this way to feel safe, or wanting situations to be this way to feel safe, or because it's consistently a list of demands that we put to the world in all these ways for us to feel, okay, so now I can love. Okay, so now I can trust. Okay, so now they're acting accordingly for me to be open. And that's exhausting. Isn't it? It's exhausting. So it's not about changing the relationship in demands. It's about really tapping into that loving, trusting heart alchemy that is available to all of us if we just give it a shot. If we just have the right resources, if we just have the right methodology to give it a shot. And then if we move from fear and the gut and the paralysis to oxygenated open-heartedness that's fun and playful and joyful spontaneously, it becomes a beautiful adventure. It becomes the mystery of what will happen next. It's not something to dread or something to project in a way that hurts us. It's something to be playful and curious about. And the most beautiful thing that we see over and over again in my own practice, in our own practice, and with people, is that spontaneous joy of living, of that openness to the mystery, that openness to the unknown, becomes delicious. And it expires that mind that wants safety, continuity, step A to B and C for us to, and it really bring that fear-based planning mind really takes out the juice of being alive, because needing this culture that we're in is just it's addicted to control in a way. We have insurance for this and insurance for that, but we can't have insurance for life. We don't know when we're going to die. We don't have insurance for when people will change or not. So what's left? Would you be interested? Would you be curious about being excited about the mystery? Would you be interested? Would you be excited about being excited about change in whatever way it comes? Wouldn't that be much more relaxing? I think so. We think so. And that brings a gathering. When people connect in that way, there's a beautiful community that happens that embraces that joy of life and that mystery and that willingness to be open. And what we see, we have a community in Europe, we have a community in Canada and the US and in Mexico. And what we hear over and over and over and over again is that the ultimate refuge is accessing zero space and building that capacity. Because again, it's not something you get, it's something you are. You already are that joy and that excitement. It's not something that, oh my God, I want to be that. No, you are it. And all we need is skillful methods to access that. As long as it takes, for however long as it takes, but it works. And it shocks me how well it works sometimes. Especially, recently that I've been going through dramatic changes. And it's just beautiful to notice how much power you have, how much power we have if we give it a shot, if we give it the time. So that's, again, the invitation of going from system 1 fear-based to system 2 open and excited. And I think we owe ourselves. And it's not an excitement of yay, 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 happy, happy, happy. It's a steady open-heartedness to love that elevates it.
Yeah. So that's a little bit about our path, our discoveries, our adventure, our willingness to find some amazingly powerful and efficient model that serves us. The need was very clear. It was, we need to find that piece and then see if it works, if we share the model with everybody else. And in terms of capacity, it is an absolutely beautiful model because it is completely shareable, replicable. It is easy to understand, and we just love sharing it. So thank you. I think it's a good time to start questions. Tania, do you want to say something else before we open to questions or comments?
Yeah, just one thing. We have a really, really, really cool retreat coming up at the Sentinel Retreat Center in Caslo, which is absolutely stunning.
Castle, British
July,
Columbia, right?
Caslo, British Columbia, yes, in the beautiful Kootenays, right next to the Kootenay Lake, which is a being in it of itself with those mountains. And it's happening July 20 to 23rd. I think Jacob will send the information. And it's a really wonderful opportunity to experience it. So if you want to go to a beautiful place in the summer and, and you're curious about this, we invite you wholeheartedly to join us, as well as there's other programs and immersions that are going to happen in Tulum, Mexico in October. We have some few places left. If you are curious about that, send us an email because I think, send us an email. And the other one is an immersion. We train people. We have immersions and we train people in the method. And we have an immersion coming up in Switzerland in March. So we have a beautiful community of Innerland coaches that we share and practice this. They're incredible. And you can also find them on our website. So if you go there and you see, the people that are there and you're curious and you go, gosh, I would love to try this out, you can email them. And they're amazing. And I think that's it. And if there's anything not there, Pedro and I, you can send us an email at tania@innerland.com or pedro@innerland.com.
Yeah. Jacob, we're all yours. Are there any questions?
There's some questions in the chat, and also some were sent to me in the email. So, here's a question from Curated Playlist. That's the name. I think we're all really curious. ... What are the 16 questions? ? Exclamation point.
Oh, well, they're the ones that I mentioned. I went through them very quickly. I went through them very, very, very quickly. They are in the book, and they're basically the questions of the spirit of inquiry, and then the one that I went. What are the images? Who do you turn into? Who do you turn others into? How you exaggerate? How do you disconnect? What are the habits, the patterns? What assumptions do you make? How do you create this? What are you missing? What's new, fresh, and exciting? What's the opportunity for growth? What are the next steps? What's left? I went through them quite quickly, but they are available in the app, and you can find them in the book as well. It's hard because it's an experience, so I went through them really quickly.
Very good. And Tim was asking, and actually I'm curious on this too. What would you say, because you mentioned the Byron Katie work, what are differences between IBC and the work of Byron Katie? How do they differ or similar? Or
Oh, yeah.
Do you want to go ahead, Tania?
No, you go ahead. It's
there's no turnaround. There's no turnaround.
Well, there's two things. There's two main things, and I also want to, Pedro, to say that. To say, first of all, in the work of Byron Katie, there's no concept of arriving to a zero space and identities specifically. So there's that sense of you stop at the turnarounds, how you do this to yourself, how you do this to the other, how you don't, this doesn't happen. And it gives you a perspective of the situation. But for me, for IBC, with the concept of zero space, it just takes it to another level in the sense that you're really, really, really wanting to understand, feel, and experience zero, what having zero charge with that feels like. And the other piece is a piece of identities, which means that, and we expand this a little bit with the parts work that we do, in that we really understand that when we are experiencing something painful or reacting in a painful way, it's not our whole being, it's part of ourselves. It's an identity or a part that takes the seat of our consciousness. And therefore, we deal with that angle in parts and in identities in a very different way. And the work of Banyan, it's always dealing with me as a whole. And in Innerland, there's a little bit of a difference in the IBC process. What would you say, Pedro?
Yeah, I would agree. I would say the main difference would be the identifying, accessing, identifying, and relaxing into zero space. We call it zero space because when we start the questions, we say, how activated is this for you, 1 to 10? Oh, I'm at a 10, I'm dying here. After the questions, as you go through the questions, every reiteration, every cycle that you go, you should be getting to a lesser number, a lesser number, a lesser number, until you get to zero. When you get to zero, recognize, relax, and expand. Recognize, relax, and expand. Recognize, oh, this is zero. Relax into the experience and expand the experience. So our hope, our expectation is that the people that practice IBC are going to become familiar with their system too, however you want to call it, with their Rikpa experience, their Mahamudra experience, their clarity experience, whatever you want to call it. They're going to be able to connect with it, and they're going to go, oh, this is it. And in the same way you build a path, first, in a forest where you can barely, make it like distinguish the path the first times you go through. The more you go in, the more you recognize, the more you clarify, the more you expand, the more you recognize zero space, the more you're able to actually live from that experience in a day-by-day basis. And then the method is let go of, right? Then, oh, I lost my sense of understanding, clarity. I lost. It's an invitation to move systems. Permanently move systems in a way that is reliable and in a way that it is sustainable. And why is it reliable and why is it sustainable? Because you recognize the space. Oh, this, I know. Oh, it's like exploring an island. Oh, I know the waterfalls down this path. I know because I've been there so many times, right? So I would say that that's one of the main differences where it's this recognition of this clarity of this. Oh, this is me in system 2 or in my, however we want to call it, right?
Thank you. There was a couple of things I just wanted to throw in that just because I was listening and enjoying your talk so much. I love this point that you make about starting again, or you get to the bottom of it and you're like, what's more or what's else? Because that's something that I think when I was doing other similar work, I hadn't thought to do that. That what else is the next? Is there's more, and you can keep going. That's such a relief, because I think sometimes when you get to the bottom of some of these things, you feel like, oh, I kind of failed. Like I got so far and I'm stuck. But you realize that more is actually the next piece, right? You can keep going.
Yes.
Yeah, and
go.
Yeah, well, because like Pedro said, you become familiar with that state, then you know if something's left, because you know that state so well, and you've relaxed and expanded. So if something is up and you go through it and you're not there, it's not that you're doing anything wrong. It's just that there's more to explore, and you just allow the questions to do their magic, and you just end up there again.
So it seems like the core insight of like where this is coming from is that state of like emptiness, I guess, and you're just arriving there through questioning your fixed view, and then it just when you see it, then it's like a Ramana Maharshi or something. Like it's a sort of a self-inquiry at a deep level.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's removing the head trash from the internal sun.
It's always shining.
That's always shining. Yeah.
And let's see if there's more. Somebody had a question just about comparing it to, or if there's overlap with CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy.
The essence. Let me rephrase it. Several transformational models have the same starting point, which is we build assumptions or beliefs that may not be serving us really well. And there's different approaches on how to address those. In my personal experience with cognitive behavioral therapy, what we're doing is we are reinterpreting the issue. Example, very common in CBT, elevator phobia, exposure therapy, and let's get closer and closer and closer to the elevator, and then suddenly we're in the elevator, and guess what? You're not dead. The elevator didn't fall, and you're still breathing. And so you incorporate that, and you what's the word that I should be using here? You develop a new narrative for the experience of the elevator, right? From our perspective, it's still a narrative. It's still something that was built now by flood exposure or whatever. There's many CBT models or techniques that tend to produce the same results, the shifting of the experience. With IBC, we do not rebrand experiences. You go to your 0 point.
Mm-hmm.
And what you experience to be whatever's going on in life is understood by that deeper space, which is not something that, it's not a reinterpretation of algorithms. It is a source of profound clarity and self-alignment. I don't know if I'm being clear. On the one side, you reinterpret and repackage assumptions, and in my experience, that's how I understand it. And on the other, in the IBC model, you go to source and you experience life from this self-alignment and not from a process of repackaging algorithms. Does that sound like something that makes sense, Tania?
100%. Nothing to add. Mm-hmm.
I have to throw in this one memory, and maybe you guys, I wonder if you wove this in ever. I remember one time I was training with you on an Innerland thing, and we did this thing in the forest where you asked a question like, why?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember this?
Yeah.
Like, what was it? You'd ask a question like, why are we walking? And then the person would answer with a question. But we could only answer with a question, right? Why are we walking?
Yes.
Why are we not walking? Well, why does one question why you're walking? And it always goes to this like kind of a zero space kind of situation, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's a very, very classic Aristotle peripatetic method, that you can be in dialogue while walking, but only answering, giving questions and answering with questions until you collapse the conceptualizing mind, and then what's left. Yeah.
And it's amazing how quickly that happens. It's like you're suddenly very philosophical or beyond.
Because you know, there's that in Pedro's book, his other book, Reflection, you know, there's the exercise of using any situation and not landing, so not giving it this solid concept, this is what it was, not fixing it, and not giving it a name. So just think of that. Just if you're in a situation, if you're not naming it, you're not landing on this is this, and you're not fixing it this way, what's left?
Mm-hmm.
It's a very beautiful thing to notice how much suffering our conceptualizing mind creates. So if you don't let the conceptualizing mind take over, and you don't let those concepts be the guide, what's left?
Mhm. And in our programs and in our conversations, more and more we're noticing that the theme or the concept of capacity shows up. Capacity to access this clear mind, to access this clear, powerful state. What is it that gets in the way of this accessing, this profound, self-aligned, beautiful, joyful, connected, transcendental space that many of us are looking for? And it boils down to density. It boils down to lack of understanding. Tania was talking about heart alchemy, this movement from you know, hundreds of thousands of years of evolution from the gut. Why from the gut? Because it was evolution through fear, through hunger, through jealousy, through disconnection, through threat. And now moving into the heart, this heart alchemy is an expansion of self-connection and the radiance of love that we all have internally. And we just need to see where it's shining from. And we generally are not able to see the source point of this experience because of this set of algorithms that are getting in the way, that are, making things blurry in our lives. And we often use in our courses the analogy of the VR set, those sets that you put on and you put on some, and then you're out there in the house and you're breaking everything and the TV is, all trashed, et cetera, et cetera. And that's how we live, because these algorithms limit our ability to see where we really are and to truly understand what's going on around us. So the challenge, and this is why we love what we do so much, the challenge is to build capacity for self-accessing to that light. And as soon as that happens, there's this crack, as using the term of Leonard Cohen, there's this crack internally that shows you the light in everything, right? And that's the most exciting thing in the universe, for us at least. And that's our invitation. Our invitation is to give yourself a chance. Just 16 questions. And my recommendation is, if you buy the book and you read it and you get how to answer the questions, and you go through the questions yourself and you do it, you write them down, et cetera, and it feels that it works for you, that's perfect. If you go through the questions and they do nothing for you, go find somebody that's trained in IBC and ask them to support you going through the questions, because the questions are powerful. It's not that the questions may not work, is that if for whatever reason you're not getting the results that you should be getting answering the questions, you need pointers on how or where to answer the questions from. So yeah.
So the questions alone can steer you to this place. You don't need guru or a Shaktipat hit or anything. It's just the questions.
Well, you need an obstacle.
Okay, that's easy to find.
Yes, you need some suffering.
Okay.
Something that you can figure out, the questions, and the spirit of inquiry. The spirit of inquiry is the energy that allows for a different mind to answer. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. We've reached the time. I wish we could talk forever. But I wanted to just remind everyone, Inquiry-Based Coaching book is available from innerland.com. And Tania and Pedro have workshops coming up. I put the link in the chat there, and I'll send it in an email. And it's just such a delight and inspiration to see both of you. So thank you so much for coming.
Oh, thank you, Jacob, for giving us the space. Thank you for your generosity. And thank you, everyone that took the time to listen to this chat. Thank you for your willingness and to be here with us.
Thanks for joining us for Branches of Wisdom, a podcast of Banyan Books and Sound, Canada's spiritual and healing resource since 1970. Our podcast producer is Jacob Steele. Watch all our conversations on YouTube by searching for Banyan Books, or listen on your favorite podcast platform. Please subscribe, follow, like, and leave your reviews and comments. We love to hear from you. For all our live events, books, and more, visit us at banyan.com.